There are people who work within systems, and then there are the people who are called to change them. Today's conversation sits at that intersection. When we talk about mental health, we often reduce it to something personal, something private, something individual. But what happens when healing becomes policy? When access, dignity, and care are shaped not just in therapy rooms, but in legislation? What happens when a social worker, someone trained to see people, context, and complexity, steps into spaces where decisions impact entire communities? That is the conversation we're having today. This is not about policy. This is about power. This is about purpose. And it's about reclaiming the value of a profession that has been essential, whether it was recognized or not. Welcome to Rise and Thrive with Dr. J. Nicole, where we rise in faith and thrive in purpose. Let's get into it. Today's guest is a councilwoman, a two-time HBCU graduate, a Howard alumnus of the Howard University School of Social Work, and my fellow social worker who is operating at the highest level of influence while still holding onto the lens that taught her how to truly see people. Let's welcome Councilwoman Sharika McCarthy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for joining us today. And before we get into policy, legislation, and systems and all of that, I want to start with a part of you that existed before all of this, right? While titles matter, the foundation, though, that's what sustains you. And when the weight of those titles show up, right? So you need that foundation. So, what drew you to social work, and how does that lens still shape how you move in policy spaces today?
So, ironically, when I was in high school, I did not want to go to college. I told my parents I wanted a one-way ticket to Dallas and I was going to be a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. That's
Okay.
all I that's all I wanted, right? And then after the summer before my senior year, I worked in a daycare and I was in that daycare for 40 hours a week. And I realized that I was gonna have to make money some way, and this was not it.
Okay.
So, I knew I wanted to kinda work with children and be a helper because, that's what a cheerleader is, but, I ended up meeting a woman who worked in the daycare, and she did all of the things, and everybody loved her, and everybody went to her for everything, and I was like, "I love her, I wanna be her." And I found out she was a social worker.
Okay.
And when I found out she was a social worker, I said, "Say less." And I went on and applied for college, and I was gonna be a social worker. And so, in undergrad, I did social work. That's kind of more of a general degree. So we learned case management, foundations of social work, and things of that sort. But I had a professor who said,
Mhm.
you should really get your master's. And if you get your master's, you can't go anywhere but Howard. And so I said, okay.
My kind of people.
Okay, and, what did I do? I went on and applied for Howard, and it was there where, my love for helping, continued, but while I was there, I was taking a social policy course, and I wasn't doing a good job in that course. I was
Okay.
struggling. I was struggling, and, I had an assignment, about teenage pregnancy,
Mhm.
and I was like, "I'm gonna put on a performance for my professor so I could get an A, so I could pass this class because what they say, fake it till you make it."
Yeah.
I called up my uncle, he's a DJ. I said, "Hey, I need a song about teenage pregnancy." He said, "That's easy. Brenda's got a baby." Let me tell you something.
Tupac.
When I listened to those lyrics, my understanding of systems, my understanding of oppression, my understanding of generational trauma, my eyes opened. And
Okay.
it just changed me forever.
Mm. Wow. So thinking about that, like you had that eye-opening moment. How does being a trained social worker allow you to see things differently, especially at the legislative level?
So, there's something called a root cause analysis, right? And that has been my focus. For so many years, we throw money at problems, we try to legislate morality, all of the things, right? And I've always said if we can get to the bottom of it, what is underlying? Just like if I
Okay.
was doing an intake, right? You're coming with presenting symptoms, but what is the underlying diagnosis, right? And so that's what the root cause analysis is. We see that, our school systems are failing, but why? We've been giving them money for years. The biggest part of the budget. Why are they still failing, right? And so getting to that root cause analysis, that social work lens allows me to do that.
Love that, love that. And so talk to us about your journey from knowing you're applying to Howard to becoming councilwoman.
So,
Okay.
for me, um, after the whole eye-opening situation, I immediately got involved. I ran for student council. I started attending my neighborhood meetings for the city council in my neighborhood. And the very first council meeting I attended, my predecessor stood up and resigned. It was almost like destiny.
Right, you walked in at the right moment.
It was almost like destiny. And so there was an appointment process um, that happened in maybe June or so. I did not get the appointment, but September there was an election.
Okay.
So I did put my name in for the appointment. I didn't get it. So there was somebody who served for, a handful of months. And then I actually ran in the next election and I won.
So you ran and won the first time.
Absolutely.
Wow. I wonder what the percentage is
Except
of
for
that or
that
how
one time I
common.
ran for student council president because I lost that election. That was the
Well,
last
we're
one I lost.
talking about but we're talking about your seat, right? Like with the city. So I guess you had some trial runs already before, but the one that mattered, that's the one that you won the first election cycle. That's
Yes.
amazing. Congratulations on that. Tell them a little bit about where you serve, how long you've been serving, and what some of the main focus areas are for you.
So, I am currently a council member in the city of Seat Pleasant, Maryland. Seat Pleasant sits on the northeast corner of Washington, D.C., but it is in Prince George's County, Maryland. So we border the district line, but we are in Maryland. And that's important, right? Because Prince George's
Hmm.
County has been known to be the most affluent African American county in the country, now the second most affluent, as some of our residents have migrated south. But um, while we are seen as a suburb, we're so close to the district line that we have a very city feel, if you will. And so there, I try to champion legislation that looks at the whole person. I try to make sure that, you know, everything from fees and services, make sure they're accessible to all people. When it comes to taxes, making sure that rates are representative of the income that folks receive. I fight at the county level for a certain type of establishments. While we don't currently have control over what establishments come in and out of our city, I do go and advocate at the county level for those things. And then at the state level as well, we just were able to advocate for our police officers to um, pay into a retirement system. They have my whole time in office not had retirement. There's an officer that's been an officer for 19 years with no type of retirement, and so we were able to successfully advocate for that at the state level. So really, things that make a difference in people's everyday life.
And those are critically important. And let's talk about what mental health legislation are you currently working on or are you most passionate about right now?
So one thing I found was because my city is a little smaller and we don't have our own like Department of Social Services, we don't have our own behavioral health services and things like that. I had to be creative. There at one point, which crime is down now, but at one point crime was a big issue. There were a lot of quality of life crimes happening in my community. And so I would champion a lot of legislation to help those quality of life issues. For instance, whether it's emergency relief programs where if people got behind on their bills, we could help them out. Um, this is still pending, but there was some relief to business owners as a tax incentive if they provided 30% or more of healthy food options or health and wellness services, right? That
Hmm.
has not passed, but I'm still working on that. We also developed our very first of its kind in our city social work internship program, where a social worker actually would come into the city. They would create a resource directory. They would do research on the needs of the community and report back to us so that we could have that lens and it not just come from myself, but come from someone else as well.
And we love data, right? And it's
Yeah.
nothing like data to be able
Data
to,
drives decisions.
yes. So on the state level, are there some other legislations that you're focusing on?
There is a legislation that I recently attended a hearing for, and I forget the bill number right now, but there's a bill that was proposed essentially to allow insurance companies or to ask insurance companies to reimburse placement sites for social work students, psychology students, and things like that. Now, the idea originally was for these interns to be paid. But,
Correct.
once it gets in there and people start throwing amendments and stuff like that, it kinda gets watered down. And so we're still in the fight to get the interns paid, but as of right now, we're fighting to make sure that across the board, a lot more, uh, people can bill for services provided by, interns.
And I think that's the beauty of legislation, right? Like there are people obviously right now who would benefit, but you're setting up the next up, right? The next generation,
Absolutely.
the next cohort so that they can have a better quality of life as well and go out into the world and do good right today.
Honestly, I don't know if it's necessarily a gap, but more so a barrier. And
Okay.
and I'll tell you why. Because there is a gap, but it's not specific to mental health. The barrier right now are the systems, right? The systems are not set up to serve the people, right? The systems are set up to protect the government, to protect the large corporations, so like the insurance companies for sure. There's no reason. I was just at a hearing and they were debating whether or not physical therapy should be considered a primary care issue, right? Like it's a
Interesting.
specialty. It's a specialty, if you will. And it's like this is preventative care. You know, after you have an accident, if you go and do physical therapy, it prevents you from having long term damage, right? It prevents you from long
Correct.
term being handicapped or what have you, right? And so that and occupational therapy and things of the sort, right? Those are preventative care, but it's treated like a luxury.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in terms of mental health, I think that there's such a stigma. Insurance companies don't want to cover certain things. There are people currently right now who are misdiagnosed because it's easier to get the insurance company to pay for services for another diagnosis versus the actual diagnoses. I remember when I was at Howard, I wrote a paper called The DSM Game.
Mm,
And essentially what I talked about in the paper was when a baby is born, it has a set amount of time before the baby has to have a name. But presumably, the baby still has a head, arms, legs, it's breathing. It is still a baby, whether you name it Keisha or Marcus, right? Like it's still a baby. And it's the same with people come in with presenting symptoms of a diagnosis. Whether
okay.
I'm giving them borderline personality disorder or I'm giving them bipolar disorder, right? They have symptoms that need to be treated, and
Love
so,
this.
for me, I wanna cut the games. Cut the games, serve the people. I
'Cause you're absolutely right, that's what it is, right? Like, they have symptoms, let's treat them, we see that they have it, we're yep, you're right. 'Cause we could easily keep on going. So for some folks who maybe don't understand, talk about how policy decisions directly impact whether someone well, you're kinda getting at that, but just more in detail, right? Like, how that can impact how somebody can access care, stay in care, and receive quality care.
So oftentimes when people think of government, they always think that it doesn't affect them, right? On my level of government, at the local level, the most local level of government, city council, we know that that affects the people, right? Your trash being picked up, your roads being done, your police officers, right? What businesses and stuff are in your city, that affects you. We know that, right? But when it comes to state and federal, sometimes we get lost on how it affects us. Our state and federal government have the ability to tell us what care we can and cannot receive, right?
Yeah.
What insurance companies can and cannot charge us. What utility companies can and cannot charge us, right? The government has control of that. And even if um they don't have control, they're able to come back and say, "Hey, we don't like that. We don't like what you're doing. Stop it." Right? And so everything you do, the government affects you. It's just how close it affects you. Sometimes you're affected. It's kind of like when you throw a rock in a pond, right? That first hit is real deep. It's real deep. So some people, it will automatically affect them. And then there's other folks that it won't affect you until down the line,
Yeah, that ripple out.
that ripple out. Like, for instance, everything that's going on with ICE. Right now, the people who are in the country undocumented right now, they're that first ripple, right? They are being deported. But those people who are in their family, those children in their family who are our babies now, in years to come, their trust of the government, right? Their ability to function when they see police, right? That trauma that is being imposed on them will continue to ripple for generations.
Before we continue today's conversation, I want to share something that has become part of my personal self care routine. I've partnered with Canvas Beauty, a Black woman owned beauty brand built around confidence, community, and intentional self care. Their products are designed to help you take care of your body while feeling good in the skin you're in. And if you've been following Rise and Thrive, you already know caring for yourself is not vanity, it's alignment. And if you want to try Canvas Beauty for yourself, you can use my affiliate link in the show notes and use my code Genie3 for a discount at checkout. Now, let's get back to today's episode. See, that's that social work lens right there. The unintended consequences.
Absolutely.
That's a Howard University education for you right there.
How a prepared
Um,
social worker.
yes, indeed. So thinking of through that lens, that the magical question. So if you could if you went to sleep and you woke up and things were different in the when you think of policy and mental health, what would it look like and why?
So I'm not even going to think mythologically, right? Like,
Okay.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to think if I went to bed today and maybe I was in charge tomorrow, but it was the same set of whatever, right?
Okay.
I would put more social workers in places. There's no reason why somebody, no shade, with a high school diploma that has never went to medical school, has never treated a patient, is determining whether or not a doctor is right in their decision to treat a patient, right? There's somebody that's not qualified, a DEI hire, if you will, not qualified to tell a doctor what they can and cannot bill for. Oh, they don't need that service. Well, how do you know? So I put more social workers in places um where there needs to be a better analysis of decision making, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that would look like in the legislative affairs at the state house, right? I would put social workers there. Insurance companies would be required to have social workers on staff, right? Before any policies come about, social workers. It's kind of what some of the DEI um departments were doing, right? They were looking from specifically like race and gender and all of that. But I would think as a social worker, we look at all oppressed or underrepresented communities, right? And so I would put social workers in places. I'm not just saying school and hospitals. I mean everywhere. They even need to be in some of
Correct.
these churches. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Like, that was so good. I'm just gonna let that sink in. That was so good. So let's transition a little bit, right? Um, Now, this next part this of the conversation is going to hit a little bit different for those of us who live this work. And while we're talking about systems, we also have to talk about the people who are trained to hold these systems together, right? So, there has been discussion around declassifying social work as a professional degree. What does that actually mean? And how do you understand this issue?
So it depends on who you're talking to, right? The folks who wrote the legislation will tell you, oh, it doesn't mean anything, right? Some people will um simplify it to um being strictly about funding, right? But honestly, I believe um one, that social work is a profession. It is a professional profession, if you will.
Absolutely.
Social workers are writing court reports that determines people's futures, right? Social workers are reintegrating people into society. Social workers are processing grief. They are picking people up at their lowest of their lowest, right? And so, uh, what does that look like when you declassify a entire profession? We lose funding. Our loans are not forgiven. Eligibility for grants. So the current social workers can't have their loans forgiven. Future social workers can't receive loans. Current programs that are in place that have been in place for years may not receive grant dollars anymore. Okay. So it looks like a bunch of things, but what it really does and what it really says is these social workers don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. It makes it harder for the average person or the average American who wasn't born into money, who doesn't have a trust fund. It makes it harder for them to pull themselves up from poverty. Education has always been the great equalizer. And the specific professions that are listed to be declassified, a lot of them are helping professions. They are professions that will pick those folks up at their lowest and bring them back to where
Absolutely.
they need to be.
Restore them to a previous level of functioning or higher. Yeah.
Because that doctor is going to come in and diagnose you, but that nurse is going to sit there and nurture you. That nurse is going to water you until you grow, right? And so until you're ready to be discharged. And so, like, same with that social worker. That social worker can take a child from a single parent household, a drug addicted parent, and help them to become valedictorian. So, again, while yes, some people want to talk about money, I genuinely think it is about devaluing the profession so that people don't listen to us. So people don't listen to us.
Yeah. So why do you think that conversation is happening right now?
Let's see. The people without morals have the presidency, the House, the Senate. This is prime time to do it. So while they're saying nothing is getting done, the Democrats, literally they control everything right now. Funding is a big thing, right?
Yeah.
Funding is a huge thing. But also research.
Say more about that research. That's so
There are
important.
social workers who do research. And I'm not talking about quantitative research. I'm talking about qualitative research, storytelling research, right? Research that actually gives you perspective. Research is not just checking boxes, right? It's a whole um manifest or transcript of people's thoughts and feelings, right?
Yes.
And so that's attacking that. If we want to say that certain things in history never happened, you know, What other way to muffle those things than to stop the vehicle that's telling the story?
That's good, Sharika. And it's not just good because my research for my dissertation was qualitative. It focused on the experiences of African American women who have served in political offices that are or were social workers, right? And it told a very different story, but it's not one it's right in front of us. As well as it was an opportunity for you all to speak up for social work and about the influence of social work education on the work that is being done by so many people in positions like that you sit in and all levels is critically important.
So here's what I spoke earlier about gaps, right? There are
Uh-huh.
some gaps that are currently happening across the profession, and across the arena of social work. My main issue, and I guess we'll get into this when we talk about the other segment, but
Mhm.
if not us, then who?
Correct.
If not social workers, then who? So
Yeah,
I'll let
because the
your
needs
questions
will be
come
the
before I
needs.
the
Yep,
needs will
I
be the needs.
appreciate that. Yep, the needs will be the needs is what it goes back to with what you were saying about the specific diagnosis. Just because you devalue a position or a profession, it doesn't change what the needs of the American people are.
Or change the
Uh,
diagnosis because they took a lot of stuff out of the DSM for the stat and the five. That didn't change them people from having them symptoms.
It does not. It does not change the quality of life, how they're showing up in their communities, and all of the subsequent ripples. It's giving like a onset of chaos, really and truly. So, what do you think needs to happen in order to protect and elevate the value of social work?
Well, just that. We need to go back to our social work values. We need to look at those NASW ethical responsibilities and the values of the profession, right? Where we're talking about service, are we really talking about service? Let's really talk about integrity, right? Like, let's really talk about dignity and worth of a person. Like, that's real. Like, let's live by that.
Yeah. So, if you had to speak directly to a social worker right now who might be discouraged by what they see happening, or even a student, right? Like a master's student, a BSW student, wherever they are in the social work education pipeline, what do they need to remember about the value of this profession and the work that they're doing or are about to do?
Uh, I would say, like Dr. King said, that the measure of a social worker, and I'm paraphrasing, the measure of a social worker, right, is not when the times are good. It's when the times are rough. It's the ability for you to dig deep in your tool chest and see, oh, I need to bring the strengths based perspective here. I need to do a little CBT here, right? I need to do a family systems analysis here, right? Go back to your roots and your tools. The tools are the tools for a reason. Research has been done. And while we know a lot of that research was rooted in Eurocentric viewpoints, a lot of that stuff does still work, right? And so my thing would be, remember, it's not about how your good days go, it's about how your bad days go and about the tools that you continue to use.
What I appreciate about your work is that it didn't and it hasn't just stopped at policy. And influence, it not only happens in systems, it sometimes requires us to build something of our own. Tell us about the social work plug, what it is, and what gaps does it fill?
I thought you never asked. So the social work policy plug is an LLC that I have created. And it sits at the intersection of social work values, political literacy, professional accountability, right? The National Association of Social Workers has a code of ethics, and 6.04 is um, under the ethical responsibility to broader society, but it specifically says to social and political action, right? Social workers are called under that ethical principle and responsibility to be involved. They are called to advocate for better systems. They are called to advocate for better qualities of lives, but in political ways. And so I created the social work policy plug into and it's threefold actually. There's a social work aspect, a policy aspect, and a plug aspect. And so the social work aspect, I'll still do trainings and I'll still do seminars, I'll do toolkits, right? The policy part will be advocacy, political literacy, right? And things of that sort. And then a plug will be like strategic planning, um, strategic partnerships, right? Connecting people. Sometimes we're just not talking to the right people. Right,
Correct.
and so, the social work policy plug main focus is to demystify government and legislation and to make sure that folks can understand it at the most basic level, but there are some underlying goals of the social work policy plug, and that is to get more social workers to run for political office.
Love it. Need us. So, talk to us a little bit more about what inspired you to create this at this stage in your career.
So, I am at a very pivotal moment in my career. I've been elected, October would be 10 years that I've been in elected
Wow,
office.
that much time has gone by?
Yeah, yeah. I've been at my 9 to 5 for 9 years. And I'm kind of sick of getting in trouble for telling them that their policies are not working. And so And so I want to take what in any classroom in America would be looked at as the disruptive kid. And I want to take that and make it something powerful. And so I'm taking everything that I've learned from politics, everything that I've learned from direct practice social work, everything I learned in school, and I'm putting it together in one place to make things better for folks. I really want folks. There's a big election coming up. The primary election is coming up in the state of Maryland. So folks will vote for the governor. They'll vote their state delegates, state senators, their county council members, their county executive, their register of wills, I mean, school board, you name it, central committee. They'll be voting for all of these positions. Some people don't even know what a register of wills is, but it's an elected position or a sheriff or what they do. So educating people on these offices, because remember, we talked about those ripples.
Mhm.
That sheriff may never affect you unless you have any eviction. That sheriff may never affect you. You may never come in contact with the sheriff department. The register of
Right.
wills. It might not be until your mom, your grandma, your uncle passes before the register of wills means anything to you. But it's important to educate ourselves now so that when we are in those situations, which is why I love social work so much, we know in therapy, we give our clients the tools so that when they are in those crisis situations, they know how to handle it. So right now, we're giving you the tools and the knowledge about these different elected positions so that when you are in need of something, you know who to go to, you know what to ask for, right? And so we're empowering you now, at your baseline so that when you are in those crises, you know exactly who and what.
Love that. All right, beautiful people. If this episode has already blessed you in any sort of way, we ask that you like, subscribe, follow, share, and leave comments. Feedback helps this message reach the people who need it most. And if you're listening and thinking, I'm ready to go deeper in my healing journey, we invite you to join our school community where we continue these conversations between episodes. And it's an opportunity to connect with like minded individuals committed to growth, healing, and purpose. Also, do not forget you can shop the merch and also explore all things Evolve at evolvewithdrjnicole.com. If you love today's look and you're wondering about this hair, you can use my promo code with the link in the description to get 15% off. Thank you for rising with us. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. So, How would you say that your platform supports social workers in ways that traditional systems haven't done?
I think the main thing is really, when I talk about professional accountability, I really want social workers to understand we have an ethical responsibility to social and political action. I am not making this up. Our responsibility to our clients may be number one in the code of ethics, but number six is broader society. Okay.
Yeah.
And we have a responsibility to engage in political systems, to make a difference, to speak up. But why just speak up when we could be actually making the legislation? Why just speak up when we could be those change agents?
All right. So when I listen to everything that you've shared from policy, advocacy to business, I hear one consistent thread: responsibility. And when you think about your work across policy, advocacy, and now business, what does reclaiming the value of social work truly mean to you?
So look, for me, it's plain and simple. The value of social work is understanding that we are all different, but we all deserve love and care and respect. I mean, that's what's at the core, right? Respecting who we are, our differences, but also knowing that, we are somebody, right? And that who we are should not be dictated by what we produce. It should not be dictated by um, who our parents are, right? Our own just being, right, is important enough. And so I am hoping that people can see the value in social work past CPS, right? And past even
That's a big
therapy,
one.
because, therapy is the sexy part of social work. But I want folks to see past CPS and social work. I want folks to see politicians. Social workers can be politicians.
Absolutely. See, you got me over here inspired because I've not, outside of publishing my dissertation, I haven't really used my data. And you're making me feel like this might be the time to use it. And we could probably talk more offline about that and how we can use it given what's happening right now. See, you done activated me, right? The obligation,
I learned
the
a little something
ethical
about secondary
responsibility.
data as
Okay.
well, just throwing that out there. A little something about secondary data, if you will. So, just saying.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. So, what impact do you hope that your work has done and will do for future social workers as well as for the profession as a whole?
So, there's a quote that I used to use during my first term. Now, I want everybody to know when I first got elected, I was 25 years old, and then I got sworn in, I turned 26. Guys, my quote was, I put the lit in politics. Okay. I put the lit in politics. And let me tell you why. I really want to make politics cool. I want folks to know that it's okay to be a politician. They're not all liars, manipulators, stealing money. That's not, I know many more social workers who are elected, and also people of other professions who are elected that are not doing those things, right? And so I'm hoping that my litness, if you will draw people to the profession of both social work and politics. I'm hoping that people will see me and say, wow, you know, look at where she came from, look at where she is. And
That's
ultimately, that
good.
more social workers will run for political office because that's just where we are.
It's needed. And we have a very unique perspective that can do so much good for this country. And see, you got me thinking about a specific course I took with Dr. Hussein, displaced populations. And this was one of the times where I'm trying to remember the context, but they were splitting children from their families. Was it with Mexico? I can't remember what country it was, but they were separating the children from the families, and there was no plan for reunification. Obviously, in our discussion in the classroom, we immediately knew what the issue was, but no one thought of that. And so that's one of those things that speaks to why we're needed when these decisions are being made, especially around every sphere of life, because social workers are there. We're in the hospitals, we're in the schools, every system. We are there, but we don't have the seats at the table. And so this
Correct.
is making me think about, if they don't give you a seat at the table, you bring your own chair. And we've gone as far sometimes as you bring your own table. Now, people are building on that, right? Like, we don't create your own table. But we also have to understand, and I know you do, change happens from within an organization. It's resistance doesn't only happen outside of the system.
Mhm.
Sometimes it has to happen from within. And so with that in mind, what do you hope is different about the profession and your city, your country, the state of Maryland, because you were in these rooms?
Really hope, honestly, one, that people see social work in a different light. Every room that I walk in, I tell people I'm a social worker. I don't care what I'm doing. Oh, that's not germane to this topic. Yes, it is. Because I need you to know that I see people, right? And so I'm hoping that the people I encounter recognize that social work is not just a profession, but it's a way of life. I am hoping that I leave everywhere I go in a better place than what I found it in. I am hoping that I inspire others to do the same. I am hoping that the next time that legislator reads a bill, they consider the unintended consequences, right? That impact that they didn't realize or think about the last time. And so that is my hope. Um, and, if God is willing, the social work policy plug will infiltrate every system in the state of Maryland. and we will make a difference.
Love that, love that. And so as we come to a close, if you could leave our audience with one powerful truth to help them to rise and thrive, what would it be?
Be authentic. Do not shrink yourself for anyone. There's a strength in every personality trait, every pattern, every behavior. There is strength. And so do not shrink yourself, but also be mindful of your impact on others. But be authentic and be true to yourself.
Love that. That is some sage advice right there. Well, thank you again, Councilwoman McCarthy, for joining us today on Rise and Thrive. If people want to stay in touch with you, if they want to find out more about the social work policy plug, how do they do that?
So if they want to find out more about the Social Work Policy Plug, they could email me, Sharika@socialworkpolicyplug.com. They could also follow me on Instagram at Social Work Policy Plug or on TikTok at SW Policy Plug. And that's how you can reach me.
All right. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. And I always pray that episodes land on the ears that need to hear and the eyes that need to see. And this is really and truly one of those messages. So there are moments in life where you realize your training was never meant to confine you. It was meant to prepare you. And for many of you watching or listening, you've been operating in a space where your value has been minimized, overlooked, or misunderstood. But today's conversation is a reminder. Your work matters. Your voice carries weight, and your impact is not limited to where you started. And if this conversation spoke to you, if it challenged you, if it affirmed you, or if it stretched your perspective, this is your invitation to stay connected. Make sure that you are subscribed to Rise and Thrive with Dr. J. Nicole, wherever you're listening. Join the community, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are a professional, a leader, or someone who knows that you are called to do more, this is a space where you can have those conversations. Until next time, I'm Dr. J. Nicole, and this is Rise and Thrive.